rich brother, won't you?
Have you ever noticed how staring into a fire can put you in an almost trance-like state? Ancient cultures believed fire gazing was a gateway to profound intuitive wisdom, and modern neuroscience is starting to understand why.
That's fascinating the way something so primal can actually alter our consciousness. What really strikes me about this book is how it bridges that gap between ancient practice and modern understanding.
You know, the author makes this compelling case about how we're all born with these intuitive abilities, but our modern world has trained us to ignore them. They describe it as like having a high-powered antenna that we've forgotten how to tune.
The scientific backing for this is pretty remarkable. Studies show that when people gaze at flames, their brainwaves actually shift into patterns associated with deep meditation.
And what's really interesting is how the book connects this to practical skills, like reading micro-expressions. They explain that these subtle facial movements happen in milliseconds, the pupils dilating, tiny muscles around the eyes contracting, and they reveal emotions before people can even consciously mask them.
Well, that reminds me of how FBI interrogators use these same techniques. It's like the author is teaching us to become emotional detectives.
Exactly. And here's what's wild. Research shows we're actually processing about 11 million bits of information per second, but our conscious mind only handles about 40 bits. So, all that other information, it's being processed intuitively.
So you're saying we're already taking in all this data, we just need to learn how to access it.
Precisely. And the author provides these fascinating exercises to develop this awareness. Like one where you practice scanning a room with your eyes closed, trying to sense where people are standing. Studies show people can actually develop this ability with practice.
The way they describe establishing energetic boundaries is particularly interesting. It's not just about protection, but about creating a clear channel for intuitive information.
And they cite this research from the HeartMath Institute showing that our hearts actually generate an electromagnetic field that extends several feet from our bodies. So when they talk about reading people, there's actually a measurable physical component.
That's such a powerful bridge between the mystical and the measurable.
You know what really got me? The section about how trauma and unresolved emotions can actually block our intuitive abilities. They reference studies showing how emotional stress literally changes our brain chemistry and can inhibit these subtle perceptions.
The metaphor of fire as a transformative force really comes through there, this idea that we can use conscious awareness to burn away these old patterns.
And speaking of patterns, let's talk about their technique for developing what they call pattern recognition intelligence. They suggest keeping an intuition journal, noting your first impressions of situations and people, then checking back later to see how accurate you were.
Well, that's a brilliant way to build confidence in these abilities, actually tracking your hits and misses.
The author shares this remarkable statistic. After 6 months of this practice, most people report accuracy rates above 80% in their first impressions. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
The practical applications they suggest are pretty groundbreaking, too, from business decisions to relationships.
Oh, absolutely. And here's what I find most compelling. They're not suggesting we abandon rational thinking. Instead, they're advocating for this integration of intuitive and analytical intelligence. It's about expanding our total capacity for understanding.
That really seems to be the key message, that we don't have to choose between being rational and being intuitive.
Looking ahead, I think this kind of integrated awareness is becoming more crucial. In a world of increasing complexity and information overload, developing these subtle perception skills isn't just interesting, it's essential for navigating our modern reality.